Well, good afternoon and welcome to H360 Live. My name is Dave Duplay and I'm joined here in our New York studio this afternoon with my friend and colleague from Healthy h360, Miss Courtland Long. Well, Courtland, it's so good to see you this afternoon.
It's good to see you too, Dave.
So we had a great weekend this past weekend. We got to spend time with Art, who kidney transplant recipient.
Yes, Art is just a wonderful guy. It's really happy to see him being so healthy and back to life.
Yeah, and then Jim Cavanaugh, a new member of Healthy h360. We spent time with him.
Yeah.
He's going to have his upcoming story on Healthy h360 pretty shortly, and you're going to want to see this because he has got a tremendous, is that a word? Tremazing?
It is now.
Health journey, and he's going to want to share it with everybody for inspiration, motivation, and support. Courtland, we've got a great show this afternoon. I can't wait because Susan Bratton is going to be in the studio, and she has a company called Savor Health, and this company is all about focused on nutrition, cancer patients, and why it's so important for people going through the cancer journey to really pay attention to their nutrition. She's got an amazing story, first of all, but she started this company and she's just authored with her co-founder of Savor Health a cookbook, which is called The Meals to Heal. It's a fantastic book. It's available on Amazon.com and will be available in Barnes & Noble shortly.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get her in here to tell us all about that. But Courtland, first we have our health tips, and I'm excited about these health tips today because they really coincide with what we're going to be talking to Susan about.
Yeah, I'm going to be very excited to get Susan on the set to talk to her about these tips and also break into this cookbook. I took a peek at it before we went live on the show, and it has some really tasty looking recipes in there. And speaking of tasty, that's our first health tip: keep food tasty. Chemo can really wreak havoc on your taste buds, making certain foods taste unpleasant or metallic. So if you're having trouble drinking just plain water, try drinking some flavored mineral water or adding some lemon to tap water or filtered water. Now, if you're also having difficulty getting meats and proteins down, you can try some other sources of proteins such as eggs, dairy, beans, and fish.
Well, Courtland, I too took a sneak peek at the book, and I'm hoping that you get really incentive to go home, cook, and bring some in for the office.
There may be some tasty snacks, you know, for the office. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that leads me into health tip number 2, and that Courtland touched upon it a little bit, is to stay hydrated. It is so important, not just if you're a cancer patient going through the cancer journey, but everybody needs to stay hydrated. Your body is made up of a majority of fluids, and you got to keep them lubricated. The joints, you got to drink a lot of water every day. And our health tips, we've got a lot of people drinking a lot of water out there in New York.
Yes.
They're going to talk to us about it. But your point about putting the lemon in the water, that'll really spruce it up a little bit. I like lemon in my unsweetened iced tea, so I get a little caffeine, I get a little hydration, I get a little lemon flavor. But you really have to stay hydrated, especially in the summer months. And you know, in New York here, we work and live in a lot of older pre-war buildings, and it gets very, very dry. And so not only do you have to stay hydrated by drinking water, you should moisturize as well. The skin, you got to keep hydrated, equally as important. Remember that. So go out and get some good lotion and stay hydrated that way as well.
It is really important for everyone to stay hydrated, but I think especially so for individuals who are living with cancer and feeling some of the effects of chemotherapy. If you're having a lot of vomiting and diarrhea from the chemo, it's really important to keep hydrated so that you don't have a critical lack of those bodily fluids.
Yep. Courtland, I'm going to stop you there because you know what? When we get to the talking with Susan about this cookbook, based on some of the side effects, you can look up the side effect, and she's going to tell you what meals in this cookbook are right for you. Can't wait for that.
Perfect.
Yep.
So this brings us directly into tip number 3, which is control nausea. Now, certain foods may kick off your nausea a little more than others. You can try eating cool foods instead of warmer foods. Snack on crystallized ginger or sip on peppermint or ginger tea. Those are going to really help to discourage the nausea. And avoid greasy and fried foods, which can really make some of these nausea feelings a lot worse.
Yeah, you should really try to limit the greasy and fried foods at every point in the health journey, I think, because you know you'll start to put on a little weight, and that's not good. but especially when you're nauseous, going through chemo, and different people are going to react in different ways.
Yep.
So you need to find what's right for you, and as we always say, consult with your medical professional before changing your diet or starting a new exercise program.
Yeah.
It's really important to get a baseline reading from your physician about what you should and should not be doing. So we want to caveat that. Well, Courtland, it's the time of the show now where we send our interns out in the field, streets of New York, over to Bryant Park to see what our friendly New Yorkers know about staying hydrated, eating right, and going through the cancer journey, and nutrition, most importantly nutrition, along that health journey. So we've got a great video. You care to watch it with me?
I would love to.
Okay, guys, would you please roll the video?
For somebody living with cancer, do you think that them having a proper diet is important?
Yeah, I think anyone having a proper diet is important, but especially with such a disease, like making sure that you maintain your health by like being rounded in what you eat, I think is very important.
Salt and bread and the things like that, it produces more cancer cells. That's why you shouldn't eat like that. You should eat fruits and vegetables because they're healthy. They have many healthy acids, maybe healthy bacteria.
It is important because the patient does have to have a strong immune system.
Absolutely, I think it's very important because it can affect the immune system and your well-being, and if you're on therapy, I think it's important to eat properly.
Do you think that there's any like certain foods that people with cancer should avoid?
I'm not too familiar with what kind of foods cause cancer or don't cause cancers. I think that's more of the food science industry. But lots of fruits and vegetables are also very important.
Bread, fast food, and this kind of things that is dangerous for your health.
I don't think they should avoid. I think they would have to start to, eating a balanced diet to begin with. And I don't believe that avoiding any specific food is important.
I think like making sure like you don't have an excess of anything really, because I think excess is what leads to being unhealthy.
Yeah.
So making sure, you just like don't go over the top.
How do you stay hydrated throughout the day?
I drink lots of water. It's easier at work when you have a bottle of water and you keep yourself hydrated. And it's a little harder when you're not at work to remind yourself.
Me, myself,
Yeah.
water only.
I drink water, coffee or tea or soft drinks.
I keep a water bottle with me.
Do you keep track of how much water do you drink a day, or?
I have a liter bottle that I fill throughout the day.
I don't keep track, but I do a lot of exercise personally. I exercise every day on a regular basis, and I occasionally supplement myself with salt tablets in the summer when I cycle for miles at a time.
Not really. Like I just make sure I always have something on me because it's good to stay hydrated.
So our next show is about people who have cancer, and one of the side effects of chemotherapy is nausea. So do you think that there are any ways that these people can help prevent nausea or make it better for themselves?
I don't think you can prevent the nausea because it's a side effect of the treatment. How you deal with nausea, I think, is the major issue, and that's probably medication which you have to take and go along. Maybe ginger tablets, some whatever makes them feel better. I think it's mostly individualized rather than general concept.
Medications. Zofran, Reglan are all medications that you can use to control nausea after chemotherapy.
Actually, they can't because it's reflectional. They cannot avoid that because it comes from your body. You cannot resist that. That's why, no.
Well, Courtland, what'd you think?
Well, that was an excellent video as always. Some of our New Yorkers were a little bit more knowledgeable about nutrition and chemotherapy and cancer than others.
Yeah, the lady with the red jacket, I believe she was a physician because she she knew her stuff. The other girl, the Asian lady, really was on top of her game as well.
Yeah.
And the one guy was really down on bread.
Yeah, he was a real gluten hater.
Maybe he's doing the paleo diet
He
or
might
some,
be,
you know,
yeah.
something like that.
Or possibly newly diagnosed with a gluten sensitivity.
Maybe.
You never know.
Yeah, but it was a great video. Our interns did a great job. Our friendly New Yorkers, always opinionated. I love, you know, the fact that also the hydration. They're all drinking water and lots of it. That was a good thing to hear. All the way around, a great video. Well, Courtland, now our favorite time of the show, and I've been so excited about this. Susan Bratton from Savor Health is in the studio. But before we get involved in our conversation with Susan, I have a few eye-opening statistics to share with you. And when I say eye-opening, these are really eye-opening. So here we go. So poor nutrition is present in up to 80% of cancer cases. Over 80%. Courtland, that's amazing to me. Malnutrition is the #2 secondary diagnosis with cancer patients. That's hard for me to get my mind around. That's a big number, secondary diagnosis. Malnutrition drives over 50% of the hospital admissions in cancer patients. Another big eye-opening number. And the one that shocks me the most of all is that malnutrition is the cause of a third of the cancer deaths. Susan, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
I have so many questions. These statistics they just take me back.
Mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling. We're going to talk about where the medical community is and all this because I think they have to play an important role in cancer patients. It seems like they're the first line defense here. But we've got so many questions, so I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague to start us off.
Great.
Well, Susan, again, thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to talk to you about Savor Health and your cookbook. We know this is going to be very important for many of our members as they are currently in the cancer journey or survivors and want to know about nutrition and how they can stay as healthy as possible. So can we start off first with you telling us a little bit about the history and the mission of Savor Health?
Sure. So the history behind Savor is I was working on Wall Street and had a very close friend who was diagnosed and ultimately died of a glioblastoma, a brain tumor, and was struck by the fact that he was told that nutrition didn't matter, to eat whatever he wanted, and he was never referred to a dietitian even once. The statistics that you presented at the beginning of the show were some of the research that I found, and I kind of said to myself, scratched my head and said, this doesn't make any sense to me. And so I looked at what the major impediments were to proper nutrition and started Savor Health to really address those major impediments. And it comes down to 3. First is treatment side effects. Things like fatigue and lack of energy, which make meal preparation difficult, if not impossible. The second impediment is information, and in this case, it's information overload. If you think about it, you go to the internet, you type in nutrition for cancer patients, 200 million plus web hits. You don't know what's safe, you don't know what to follow, it's overwhelming. And the third impediment is an absence of nutritional counseling. 80% of cancer patients never see a dietitian even once. So with that, and the evidence that showed that when nutritional issues are addressed, clinical and quality of life outcomes improve, I said, there's something here, and why not create a business and a service that addresses those 3 major impediments, and in doing so, making proper nutrition more accessible for cancer patients. So I started Savor Health. I left my job on Wall Street and started Savor Health. And our mission is really simple and really straightforward. It's to make the lives of cancer patients and cancer caregivers easier and less stressful. I mention caregivers because, as you know, caregivers really struggle with these issues as well. And in some cases, they are the ones who are really doing all the research and doing the food preparation because the patient is so overwhelmed, so fatigued, so busy going to treatment that they can't really take care of that issue.
Yeah. You know, you hit on 2 really important points here. The first being when people go to the internet and the plethora of inaccurate, bad content that they come across, to me is really
misinformation.
Misinformation.
Yeah.
And people rely on that. You know, we would never have anyone on our show or associate with anyone that we didn't vet and put through a thorough vetting process to make sure that what they're saying and the advice that they're giving our community is accurate information. So I applaud you for stepping up and really going above and beyond to bring that quality of information to your community and subsequently now to our community collectively. The second point I want to hit on is about caregiving. Now, you know, you're focused in oncology and cancer today, but I would imagine in talking to you before the show, your aspirations are to expand out. And the caregiver is so important in this nutritional equation. And I will give you the case in point. My mother is an Alzheimer's patient. My father is her caregiver. Well, prior to the diagnosis, my father was an avid golfer. He'd golf 3 or 4 times a week, never rode in a cart. He would always, you know, carry his bag. He was a traditional kind of, you know, old school, carry your bag, walk the course. And so he was very fit. And now he's the primary caregiver for my mother. And I can see him gaining weight.
Yep.
I can see the golf going from 3 times a week to maybe once a month, if he can even leave her, you know, for that period of time. So the nutrition for a caregiver is equally as important. And when you're a caregiver,
Absolutely.
if you don't care for yourself as a caregiver, you can't care for the person that you're caring for, that you
Right.
love and you're caring for.
So there was an interesting study that came out about 5 years ago, and it looked at the health status of caregivers. And what they found was that caregivers' health status was obviously not very good. They take care of the patient instead of taking care of themselves. But what they found is that after the illness was over, that the health condition of the caregiver 5 years down the road was still less positive, and they were engaging in negative health behaviors like drinking, overeating, not exercising, all of those things. And so it's a big problem. And if you think about it, there are over 65 million caregivers in this family caregivers in this country today. So non-paid caregivers. So that's a big population of people who are not taking care of themselves as well.
Yeah.
A huge problem.
Yeah.
Well, let's discuss the U.S. healthcare system for a minute.
Sure.
You know, we have a system that I think is very siloed.
Yes.
You know, and there's some belief out there that it should become more of a holistic system with an integrated approach, bringing the entire care team together to have a full conversation about the patient as a whole. And so, you know, how do you imagine this working, and what would this look like? How's it so important for the patient living with cancer?
So that's one of my personal missions, and I speak nationally about this, about the integrated care delivery team. And I'm very focused on bringing the dietitians into that circle. So if you think about the circle of care, you generally see the nurse and the doctor as kind of the 2 primary people, but you've got psychiatrists and nutritionists and physical therapists, and many times those last 3 are outside of the care delivery circle. And yet, if you think about it, if you want to address, and I'm going to use nutrition because that's what we're talking about today, if you bring the dietitian in at the beginning and they talk to the doctor and they understand, for example, that the therapy that the patient is taking is going to cause mouth sores, for example, or difficulty swallowing. If the nutritionist knows this up front, they can take a proactive approach to preventing some of these side effects and empowering the patient with ways to manage and mitigate that side effect in the first place. And in doing so, hopefully prevent malnutrition and weight loss in the first place. You can't always prevent it, but if you can proactively address it, hopefully you can at least minimize its impact. And that's what I'd like to see is everybody at the table at once, so that we can be preventative and proactive about conditions that develop down the road as a result of treatment in the first place.
You know, I really agree with what Courtland said about a holistic approach to healthcare and what you're saying as well, because, you know, and we see it here at Healthio all the time, the patients that have the better outlooks or the better attitudes. And so whether you're going through a cancer journey or Parkinson's, whatever the condition is, there's the physical healing, and that's traditionally the doctor and the nurse. But there's mental healing, there's spiritual healing, right? There's nutritional healing. So all of these things really need to come together. Why do you think that our health system has a tough time bringing that all together? Are there barriers here, or?
I think because the way medicine is practiced is, and Courtland mentioned this, it's very siloed, and the kind of the chief person at the head of the table is the physician, and they do the physical treatment. They tend to not take in medical school some of the other disciplines, and let's take nutrition. They take 15 or less hours in all of medical school is devoted to nutrition. So they're not educated in some of these other disciplines, and from a conservative perspective, you want to practice and you want to practice what you know about, and you want to recommend what you know about. So I think it's less about that they don't believe in it and more about that they don't know about it. And so that's why I think, for example, in medical school, some of these other disciplines should be touched upon, and not just touched upon, but addressed, and more hours devoted to nutrition and some of the complementary and alternative methodologies as well. For example, there have been great studies that show that yoga helps with the hot flashes that breast cancer patients go through because they're thrown into early menopause. Okay, that's something that's been proven in clinical trials, like legitimate trials. That's something that maybe we can teach a little bit more in medicine about, so that the doctors feel comfortable with recommending some of these complementary methodologies like nutrition or yoga and meditation, things like that.
Yeah, real good point.
So we have a copy of your new cookbook. It has tons of delicious looking recipes in it. I can't wait to take home and try some. So what was the process like to write this cookbook?
So Jessica and I realized pretty early into starting Savor that there was really a need to empower patients with information and content. One of the major things being recipes, because if you think about one of the ways you judge whether cancer's beating you or you're beating cancer is whether or not you can take care of yourself. And one of the main ways we take care of ourselves is we cook for ourselves. And so for the patients who can prepare meals for themselves, they really wanted to know what to cook. They wanted to know what to eat, and that's really the problem we solve, and the question we answer is what to eat. But they need to know what's going to help me manage that that mouth sore issue or the difficulty swallowing, and what's going to provide me with the right amount of nutrients, and what's going to provide me with the right amount of calories. And so we designed a cookbook around treatment side effects as well as meal occasion. And so we looked for and created recipes around each side effect, each common side effect of cancer treatment. And then we organized the book around those specific side effects. We also felt like it was really important to address some of the major nutrition topics and questions that people always ask you. So we have a whole section on commonly asked questions like juicing or organic, things like that as well, to answer those questions, as well as stocking your kitchen, how to have a well-stocked kitchen so that you don't have to run out to the grocery store every time you look at a recipe. So just having staples and things like that.
Yeah, this book is excellent. It has so many tools in it that I think are very helpful to people who maybe don't cook a lot or are getting into the cooking field, because you do say, you have a little key in the back, you know, if a recipe calls for X amount of chopped tomatoes, this is how many tomatoes you need to buy. You really help people to keep it simple, and you have the key on the side of the page of every recipe that says which side effect this recipe is good for. So I think this is going to be very successful.
So are you indirectly saying that I could probably make my way through this book and actually come out the other end with some good recipes?
You might be able to, yeah.
All right. Well, once again, the book is called The Meals to Heal Cookbook. It's a fantastic book. It's available on Amazon.com, and we'll be in Barnes & Noble shortly. Well, Susan, I have to ask you, the chocolate raspberry pudding, how's that?
Delicious.
It looks
good.
It looks phenomenal, judging from this picture. But I want to get back to something that you said about the certain kind of foods you can or cannot tolerate when you're going through the journey. And you hit upon something about swallowing. And I see you know, you've got some smoothie recipes in here.
Yeah.
And I know that some of my friends who've battled esophageal cancer have had a tough time swallowing. And so I'm glad to see that, you know, you've got this in here and you've gotten it broken out the way you do for people that really, you know, need help understanding what's most appropriate for the side effects that they're feeling. When you introduced the company, something caught my ear. You said you're, and I'll paraphrase, you have a technology, or you're a technology kind of based organization. Can you tell me what that means a little bit in terms of, you know, I think of technology as like a software company, but in your vernacular, what does that mean?
So what we've done is created a technology. It's actually a recommendation engine, and the reason for that is we want to know every patient is unique. They have unique eating preferences. Some people are vegetarians, some people are pescatarians, some people only eat meat. But they also have and respond to cancer treatment differently. They have different side effects. They have different nutrient needs. Some people need to lose weight. Some people need to gain weight. And so what we do is we take all of that information that's unique to that patient. It goes into our technology database. And then through our domain expertise in oncology and nutrition, we will recommend the solution that best meets the patient's unique needs. We have three what I'd call archetypes of patients. So one is exhausted Eric. This is somebody whose side effects are so debilitating that they can't prepare meals. In that instance, we would recommend that they have meals delivered, and we would actually select the meals for them and work with a third party to have those meals delivered. But somebody else like Inquisitive Irene can prepare meals, and she wants to be in control of her disease, but she doesn't know what to cook. So in that instance, we would recommend that we send her recipes that are designed, again, around her specific side effects, eating preferences, nutrient needs, caloric needs, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have who I can call Confused Kathy. Confused Kathy will get a recommendation that says, talk to one of our 10 oncology credentialed registered dietitians because you're overwhelmed. You've gone to the internet, you throw up your hands and you say, I don't know what to do and I'm afraid to make the wrong decision. I just want to talk to somebody who is knowledgeable and who's credentialed and who is a legitimate professional, in which case we would team them up with their own oncology dietitian.
Yep.
So the technology really drives the recommendation, but it's all based on patient unique data.
Okay, and so where can our viewers find this technology?
So our website is www.savorhealth.com. Okay. And it's a web-based interface today. We will have a mobile app soon to make it easy and put it at your fingertips as well when you're on the go, because we know that so many caregivers and patients are not sitting at home in front of their computer. They've got their smartphone in their hands.
Yeah, totally.
So how often do patients come to Savor Health? Are they chatting with a dietitian weekly? Do they get an email newsletter with their recipes in it every week? How does that work?
All of the above. Some people talk to their dietitian once a week. Other people will get a couple weeks of meal plans that are designed by the dietitian. Some people have meals delivered for week after week after week. It really depends on not just the patient's cancer, but also their caregiving situation at home. Do they have help or don't they have help? Mm-hmm. That we find is a really big driver. And you know, I think you've heard thematically today about the caregivers. We are so focused not just on the patient but the caregiver, because we know how important they are in ensuring that the patients are well nourished. So we try to make sure that we address their issues as well, and the situation, the caregiving situation at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you have a lot of stats on the clinical benefits of nutrition. Can you just share, you know, the stats I shared with the audience at the beginning were really eye-opening to me. Do you have some positive numbers that we can share with our folks?
Yes, I do. So you mentioned the hospital admissions, but so if patients are well nourished, they are admitted to the hospital much less frequently. Patients who are well nourished have fewer, less severe treatment side effects. Research finds that treatment is less toxic when patients are well nourished, and so all of those things. But let's talk about the last one, which I think is just as important. patients who are well nourished have a better quality of life. They are more hopeful, hopeful. They're more hopeful, and they feel more positive about life. And my belief is that this is not just a physical and a clinical game, but it's a psychological game. And so feeling more hopeful, I think, helps you through your treatment.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. We hear that all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, we
makes
really
sense.
do.
Yeah, from so many people we've had on the show who are survivors, who are patients going through the journey right now, we hear so often about the power of positivity
Yes.
and knowing that you have hope in your case.
Yes.
So let's talk about the future. You know, what's coming down the pipeline for Savor Health?
So, so the first thing is the mobile app. We'll have a mobile app this summer, end of the summer. The next thing is, I would really like to take this show on the road and bring proper nutrition to people with other chronic medical conditions where nutrition has been shown to improve clinical and quality of life outcomes. So I'm thinking people with chronic renal failure, heart disease, diabetes, Crohn's disease. I mean, you can, the list goes on, but the research is really compelling, not just with cancer, but with all chronic medical conditions, that nutrition is not only important from a prevention perspective, but so important during treatment to strengthen you for your fight, and also into survivorship. There's a lot of great research, and let's jump back to cancer. There's a lot of great research that shows that proper nutrition is very, very important in preventing recurrence. So, so the two things I think to look for is moving into other chronic medical conditions, and also moving into the prevention and the survivorship arena, as well as just during treatment. We want to empower patients during their treatment, but we also want to hold their hand and kind of be their nutrition concierge into that survivorship phase, when you really are a different person with very different priorities and motivations. It's a, it's a life-changing experience, as anybody who's had a chronic condition will tell you.
Now, I just want you to know that Susan and I did not talk before the show, because when she brings up the fact that she wants to take the show on the road, I have this vision of a big Winnebago going across America with Healthy h360 along the side, getting real stories from real people about real life as I go from the east to the west. And you're welcome to join us.
That'd be great. We should go into people's kitchens and show them how to make some of these recipes to manage their side effects.
Well, now you're singing my song. Once again, the book is the Meals to Heal cookbook. It's available at Amazon.com. It's also going to be available in Barnes & Noble real soon. I want you to go to savorhealth.com. Check out this website. The mobile app is going to be available this summer. You can probably find it in the iTunes store and in the Android store.
Google Play.
Google Play, right? Absolutely. Well, Susan, thanks a lot for coming in today.
Thank you.
I really admire what you're doing. And
thank you very much.
From, I've got my own personal story about why I started Healthy h360, and our stories are very similar. So I want to thank you for doing what you're doing.
Happy to be here and happy to help out.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in this afternoon, and I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this all possible. Remember, all of our episodes can be viewed on demand at healthyh360.com, and our podcast can be found in the iTunes store. Well, we're all over social media, and Courtland's going to tell you about that.
We are all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, using that hashtag #RealStories when posting, and we'd greatly appreciate it if you would do the same. On behalf of Dave Duplay, myself, and the entire Healthy h360 family, we'd like to thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next week when we're chatting with Dr. Erica Jones all about heart health.